Hey guys, this is Victoria Zates, Psychic Medium. I have a webinar coming up that I'm really excited to tell you guys about. It's called Real Talk Practical Self-Love. And it's going to be on Saturday, February 14th, of course, Valentine's Day, from 12 to 1:30 Eastern Standard Time. And all of that is going to be recorded whenever you register for it. I've also made it super cheap because I really feel that this is just very important for everyone to know. And I find that a lot of my clients really have issues with self-love. Almost everybody does to a certain degree, and we can really all benefit from this information. So I wanted to make it real for you though, and something that is very practical, because whenever we hear people talk about this, I think we just kind of like blow it off, like, oh, self-love, sure, whatever. And that's because we have no idea how to do it. Of course, this isn't something that we're taught in school. So it's not something that you would know automatically. It's kind of what you learn through the hard knocks of experience of life, I guess. So what do I mean by self-love? What do I mean by the self? Well, there's two aspects of the self that we can take a look at. One is the ego or personality self, and also your higher self. And these two parts of yourself are actually integrated, but for the sake of understanding this, we're going to go into these two different parts of yourself. A lot of the stuff that's out there that talks about self-love really has to do with loving your ego or personality self, which is definitely important, but there's a lot more to it than that. So I'm coming at it from a spiritual perspective, of course. And from that perspective, you have to understand that your higher self, knowing your higher self, knowing that that self exists, and being able to tap into that higher self and the core of that higher self, who you really are as an eternal being, is absolutely key to self-love. That gives you a strength that you don't really get from just loving your personality self, although that is also important. So as far as loving yourself from the ego or personality perspective, we're going to talk about how to know what your higher self is, but how to know what your strengths and weaknesses are from the ego or personality self. And the key phrase there is really know yourself, which has been an esoteric knowledge that goes back, way back to the Greek oracle and probably before that. Knowing yourself means knowing your strengths and your weaknesses, building on your strengths and working on your weaknesses, understanding your own psychology, why you are the way that you are, and being able to love and know those parts of yourself are important. The other thing that you really need to know has to do with spiritual laws, or basically how the world works. One of the key concepts with that is really self-forgiveness. And this is so important. And I have so many clients who, and just in general, I hear these statements from people all the time, that it's so difficult for them to forgive themselves for making mistakes. And we have to be compassionate with ourselves and understand that the very fact that we're incarnated here on this planet in a body means that we're going to make mistakes. Of course, when I'm saying mistakes, missing the mark, if you want to call it that, but also knowing that there really aren't any mistakes. There are only learning experiences. So it's really a positive way of looking at it. You're always going to learn from what you think is a mistake, which probably isn't a mistake. It's just something that you need to learn. So that's important to know for as far as just accepting and loving and forgiving yourself for things that you didn't know at the time that you obviously need to learn. So, of course, you have to resolve to learn then those lessons. And this really helps with self-esteem, because the more that you learn from the mistakes that you make, the more competent you're going to feel. And the more competent you feel building on your strengths, then the more you're going to be able to love yourself. And another really important thing is really to understand that as far as yourself and others, loving yourself is loving others. It's actually the same thing. And that's why people say it's very important, to learn how to love yourself, because if you can't do that, it's very hard for you to love other people. It's very hard for you to have compassion for other people if you can't have it for yourself, first and foremost. Because, we are all, I'm sure you would agree, one on a certain level of awareness and consciousness. Loving ourselves is always loving others. So what is loving for ourselves as far as action for ourselves is always going to be the best thing for other people. It may not always appear that way, at first it might not be, seem like the easiest thing, maybe it's a difficult decision that you have to make, but ultimately what is more loving to yourself is going to have a ripple effect to everyone that you come in contact with. So we're also going to cover really the whole idea of self-love and relationships and how all of those things really do fit together. So I'm really looking forward to doing this one. If you're watching this video, there's a link to my website. There's a link to everything nearby to register for this webinar. And I really hope to see you there. And thank you so much.